are excited about the way it turned out, and we really worked on the usability and took in a lot of the considerations that came forth from the last library building committee. So thank you so much. And we were going to have Alan and Leslie show us the final survey now. Are they able to share their screen, or Alan, do you want? Okay.
Here we go.
Yes.
Okay.
It's up. It should be up.
Yes.
It is up.
It's up.
And we all have a cut. We all have it.
Good. Oh, you want us to start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Elizabeth, before I do, is there,
Can they hear you? Can you check?
you can tell us additionally
Okay.
about,
Can you check? Can they hear you? Can they hear you guys?
Oh, I'm sorry, Alan. Could you say that again?
is there anything additionally you
plug it
can
on
tell
the
us?
other ear, Tyson. You gotta plug in the other ear.
We have
Other
to
side.
mute.
Change the sides, yes.
I don't know who
Yeah,
that
the
is.
other way. Yeah. That's right.
Can you hear us all right?
We can hear you, but I would ask everyone else to mute themselves until
Yeah,
they
well,
are.
it's hearing.
This is
Speaking.
left side.
Well, wait a
This is
second.
left. Yep, that's correct.
Go ahead.
Can you check? Okay. They can hear you. Whether they can hear you.
Nancy, could you mute everybody else except for?
Sue is the culprit.
I'm now able to join you guys.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
yes.
Okay,
Right.
thank you. Thank you. I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, Elizabeth, anything before we jump into this? Anything you wanted to add about the, or maybe you're doing that in a separate item about the rollout, about the launch? Or are you doing
Yes,
that?
I was going to talk about the launch after we did
Okay.
the survey one last time as a group.
Okay. Here's a survey which many of you have been working on for the last several weeks. Okay, I'm sorry. If I get anybody dizzy by scrolling, let me know. I understand too, there was a conversation last evening with some elected officials about it. So it's pretty comprehensive. Its purpose, its objective is primarily to help inform the library's building committee, to help inform you about what your next steps are going to be. So there's a lot of choices that are going to have to be made in the very near future. The information you get from this will be invaluable.
Amen.
I see you have to mute your mic.
Huh?
Everybody can hear you, so you have to mute your mic.
Oh, okay.
Will be invaluable to helping you make those choices about what the library is going to look like, probably where changes are going to be made, anticipating what, most importantly, I think anticipating what people's needs are going to be and not just responding, don't worry about that, and not just responding to people's needs, but anticipating people's needs too. So it's a survey for the present. What do you think? What are your thoughts about our current services and facilities? And what do you want to tell us about the future? So we think that's pretty powerful information that people are going to be able to give you.
They're looking at the PDF version, right?
They are.
So you're looking at the
No,
PDF
it does.
version?
it's
Well, I
okay.
just want to say that
Okay.
in online, when this is the PDF version, which you will use to print, but online, the logo is in color.
So everyone has seen this a number of times, right? It may be new to your new committee member. Thoughts, questions, observations?
Alan, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you address the issue that there was a question that we did not include and why we chose not to include it?
So I think that question was about locations, and the survey really is your initial contact with people about the wider general conversation about what you're going to be doing with your libraries. So this isn't a referendum about whether it's going to happen. Its goal is to elicit information to inform you all about the choices and decisions you're going to have to make. So those issues of location will come up and will be discussed with the community and will be resolved by you and your community. I think when you have better information, when you have better information from the experts, from the architects, when you have better information from the residents about how they see the future. So you're going to be able to take that and help create that vision of what the future is going to look like. Within that vision is the locations and the facilities themselves too. You want to add something?
Yeah, I think we don't want to, in our first attempt to reach out to the community, have the conversation devolved into a debate about why did you pick that site versus another site. One is you don't have any sites identified specifically yet. We have some in mind, but we really at this point want to gather information that's going to help inform the design of the library, the kinds of features you want to include in your new library, because that does ultimately play into site selection and is important information for people who are planning this, the committee that's planning the programmatic space, as well as how the architects consider the size of the building and where it needs to be sited. So that doesn't mean that we won't go to the community at some point in the future and say, here are our best options. What's your opinion? You know, and that can be through a community meeting, a town meeting, another survey, whatever it might be. We're just not at that point yet.
They're not at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tactically, it might be an interesting proposition. Strategically, it would be a losing proposition. So basically what you would be doing would be posing that referendum right now. And I don't think that's something I don't think you want to lose the referendum today. We want to make sure.
You don't want to lose it any day.
We don't, right, we don't want to lose it at all. We want you to win it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alan and Leslie. And just for the rest of the committee, the same link that we sent out before that links to the survey is the same link that is being used now. So if anybody wants to go on their own time and look through it, the final version again, please feel free to do so. The other part of our subcommittee meeting was about the timeline for sharing the survey with the community. The launch date, we're looking at January 22nd, and launch date will include an electronic launch, as well as a physical copy of the survey to all households in Bloomfield via the United States Postal Service. We're currently working on the iteration of that mailer, and the electronic launch will include many facets, including social media, email, news blasts through some of our partners in Bloomfield, including the Board of Ed and Leisure Services, and we very much so have an idea of all the places to go for the initial launch. And then in concert with Alan and Leslie, as survey responses come in, we're going to keep tabs on that and relaunch as necessary to keep this on the forefront of the agenda so that we can continue getting feedback. A big part of this is the library's new software that will be used to share our weekly e-newsletters. It's going to have a much more professional feel, and that launch will coincide with the launch of the survey. We're going to be reaching over 5,000 email recipients that day. So again, we're really excited about that. We will also have things put in print in the Bloomfield Messenger. This Saturday, there will be notice that the survey is being launched on the 22nd in the Bloomfield Messenger. And we're doing a whole bunch of other things. We had one piece of advice on Saturday was to show more excitement Most of the time I have to tame myself down. So hearing that feedback was great. And we were able to use that in some of our social media sharing after Saturday's meeting. So thank you for that input. And we're excited, and that timeline is pretty tight, and we think that we've covered all the bases. So stay tuned. We're also going to ask that as we approach that January 22nd date, that everybody on this committee share that information with fellow Bloomfield residents and talk it up amongst yourselves in your own personal circles. You know, we have a broad representation here, so we want to use that leverage as well. Okay, I think that's it.
Yeah. Elizabeth, if I might add, I just wanted to inform the group that the council approved the survey on Monday night in its meeting. So the survey was approved by the town council. There was a lot of conversation, discussion about the survey, but they voted unanimously in favor of the survey. So we're very appreciative of the council, and thanks to everyone who made that happen. We would like to entertain a motion from the group to approve the survey and its launch per the timeline. The minutes from the survey committee were included in the packet, as well as the timeline, so you can see all the launch information. But we are hoping to, Bob, yes.
Greg, there's some hands up on the screens.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the survey and also approve the timelines set out for the survey.
Great.
Excuse me, I think that's a bit maybe premature. Can we have discussions? Because we were advised to wait.
So Dunzy, you gotta have a motion to discuss.
We have to have a motion and discuss the
Okay.
motion under.
Second.
Was that Bob Ike second?
Yep, second.
Okay. Discussion on the motion to approve the survey. Yes, Mark.
I have one small suggestion. I apologize for the lateness of this, but on page 3 of the survey, the question that says, what would you like to see in a new or updated library? And then there's a list of all the spaces. The one that says auditorium for public programs, I'd like to suggest that that be changed to an assembly hall rather than auditorium. And my thinking is that an auditorium is very specific. I think it's going to invoke different, something in the respondees. When they think of an auditorium, they may say, oh, we don't need another auditorium. We have one in the high school. We have one in the other schools. I think it'd be better if it was just more generic. And I mean, we're going to end up with some kind of assembly hall. It may turn into an auditorium, but I thought it would be better that we keep it more generic at this point. I don't know if anybody else, I don't know how, if that was thought through, the word auditorium or not in the subcommittee's discussions, but that is my request.
I think, if I recall, at least part of the conversation was to have performance space. So I guess you think of auditorium as the place where assembly hall does the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think assembly hall would cover
Okay.
performance, would cover auditorium.
Okay.
Yes?
Does everybody agree with that change?
Make sure the motion, I agree with it.
Okay. All right. I saw another.
Lois, I think, had her hand up.
Lois? You're on mute.
Hold on.
Lois, you're muted.
Mine is a tiny little point. I'm hoping to win the iPad. But if I didn't have email, there would be no way for me to have you get in touch with me.
That's right.
So I think something at the end has to have address or phone number in addition to email.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you, Lois. That's a good one. All right. Okay, Michelle, I think I saw your hand. Yes.
Yes, from the standpoint of the presentation by the consultants and Elizabeth, are we talking about a number of iterations of the survey? And could you estimate what those numbers would be and how they would be interspersed throughout the process down to referendum? What I'm interested in is, that was expressed before, is how much information that people who either take the survey or read the survey can gain with regard to the manner in which the project is progressing.
Well, I think, go ahead.
So I think, you know, a lot of this is going to depend on what happens next. But I think if you're planning and moving towards a referendum, that there have to be many points of contact throughout the process to build the kind of support you're going to need to win that vote.
Mhm.
And I think that can take many shapes and forms. It can be individual meetings with key influencers in the community. It could be community-wide meetings or town meetings. You know, whatever seems appropriate to get a lot of
Meetings with
people
the
involved.
architect.
Can be meetings with the architect, which might share proposed plans for the new library and the site. It would be sharing the results of the survey that make the case for why you've made certain decisions. So, and it can be Elizabeth's weekly newsletter presenting information once a week. And once you start getting more concrete plans in place, you can put a page on your website or pages on your website that are going to contain information about the project, so that people can check their
what I'm particularly interested in is there just going to be one survey, or could there be a follow-up and a further iteration of another survey that?
That's up to you.
So a survey is a tactical tool.
Okay, and how many do you usually put out?
So if you find
what I'm interested in is knowing how the public at large is going to be responding to this and whether or not they want more information. That's my interest.
So I think the answer is we hope they respond quite positively. I think we set a target number for how many completed surveys we want, but the process of how you inform and engage the community around this project could take the shape of another survey, of some focus groups, of a town meeting, of charrettes with the architects. So your work and the committee's work is going to be continual, leading up to that survey, up to the vote.
So
right?
One very powerful thing Elizabeth's going to be able to do in maybe the third volume or fourth volume, is that what's called? Or third newsletter that she sends out, maybe at the top it says, "We hear you," or "We heard you." So a direct response. Congratulations, thank you for the wonderful responses to the survey. Here are some things we heard you tell us. You know, so there are multiple points of engagement that you're going to want to make with people. Again, if you need, or you feel you need another survey for a specific targeted audience, maybe teens or a specific targeted audience, then it's something you should do. But it should just be one among many tools you're going to have in your outreach.
Okay, so depending on the response we got, I would presume then that you would recommend to us that there should be a follow-up survey if you thought it was warranted.
Right, but I think
okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay, but I want you to remember that you want to embed it in a larger communication plan about the project, right? So it could be.
Understand.
Okay.
Right, and if I could just add, the external subcommittee, they are working on a plan, and it's fluid, and it's, you know, they are looking at community forums, you know, the meetings that will take place with council, committees within the town, focus groups, whether or not we'll do an additional survey, how we reach out to the schools. That is an ongoing process that the subcommittee is looking at and working on, and there will be more to report. This is sort of the first iteration of that process.
And you're going to have so many open-ended comments from the survey that you're going to have tons of things that you'll think of that you'll want to follow up with, and ways of communicating with people.
I think I saw, Budunzi, did you have your hand up?
I do. I
Okay.
do. Thank you. And my question kind of ties in somewhat to what Michelle was just referencing, because last night it was stated during that call with the presentation to the town council that multiple surveys would go out. And so that was my first time hearing that. And I was kind of interested in, knowing what that would actually look like and how the questions may change as responses come in from the public. It was also noted last night that there was maybe an option for people to call in and provide their responses via the telephone to library staff, which was my first time hearing that as well. So I'm interested in how that would be coordinated. But with regards to the survey that we're looking at right now, some valid points were made by some of our council members last night that I think need to be taken into consideration and possibly added to this survey. For us to have on this survey, the question of, and give me one moment because I was just there, the question of what area libraries have you visited in the past and why? If we're willing to ask our community which external libraries they visited, I think it would be paramount for us to have an understanding of which of our 2 local libraries they visited. So maybe that question can be changed to reflect our 2 current libraries and our 3rd now online library. The question could be changed and, adding, um, another question, what libraries have you visited outside of town versus listing the libraries from around the town? It would actually kind of like streamline to where there would be more space to where 2 questions could fit where that one is. It was also mentioned last night that cost and explicit language be added to the survey with regards to advising our community that this survey is for the purpose and preparation for the referendum that they will be expected to vote on in the fall. So I do think that some language there should be placed in this survey to inform the community as to the purpose of this. The purpose of this is not to just, have the possibility of winning an iPad or a Stop and Shop gift card. Okay, the purpose is to work towards the referendum. It was also mentioned last night that cost association should be referenced on the survey to get a gauge of how the people feel about the money and how much money they could possibly feel comfortable with voting for. And I think that these questions should be added because it would not only add value and transparency for our overall community, but it would be beneficial because you do have to present to the town council. And since these questions were driven by town council members, I think it would be only appropriate that they be added to the survey.
Ava?
Okay, I actually attended that meeting.
So did I.
I heard no question about the cost of the facility. The question about cost had to do with the cost of the survey itself. They were talking about the cost of the franking privileges, and they wanted to know who had provided the prizes. Was that cost that would be borne by the town, which it is not. The Friends are providing that. I have nothing about them asking about the cost be included. I think the burgers have thoroughly covered the reasons that it is not a good idea to put the location in there. And about visits to the libraries, we have that data. Rather than adding a question, we can use our own data. It's kept routinely for all of the locations, month by month, visit by visit, use by use. So adding questions to a survey that's already kind of long strikes me as something that would be counterproductive.
Excuse me, I think you may have misinterpreted my statement because my statement was not directly related to the cost of the survey delivery.
No, I
Okay,
understood that
I
you were
was on
talking
that
about
call.
the
I was
cost
on
of the
Hold
that.
on, one at a
facility.
time, one at a time, please.
I was on that call last night as well. I'm
First of all,
talking about,
the council meeting was Monday.
well,
Monday
excuse
night.
me, Monday night, pardon me, Monday night. And it was brought up in terms of cost association of the overall cost of the project.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was. It was brought up by Councilman Curtin, and then it was seconded by Councilman Gaw. They
No,
both expressed, excuse me, you can, I mean, it's public knowledge.
I had this conversation with Councilor Kirkton this week.
I'm not quite sure about your personal
anyway,
conversation.
Budanzi, finish your point.
So my point is I do think that we need to inform the community
Mm.
of the possible costs and engage where they are, since the overall community will be paying for it. I think that that should be a part of the survey question. Are you willing to pay 10 to 15 million? How much are you willing to pay? I mean, initially we asked Tai Soo Kim to provide us with a scale range of cost. And so I think that this should be provided to the community as a whole sooner than later in terms of further along in the process. And location, I'm not talking about possible locations, it's to get an understanding as to which locations that already exist that they frequent. That information may help us if by this time we haven't made a decision, make a decision with regards to location.
All right, thank you.
Chair,
Budanzi.
I
Let
call the
me,
question.
yeah, Mark, okay, you call a question. Let me just respond in that I was on the council call. In fact, I was the one responding on behalf of the committee on Monday. And the council persons, Curtin and Goff, asked questions about language being there about a referendum upcoming. They did not speak to anything about the total cost of the project. They both made comments about the location. They thought that a question should be included in the survey for the location. This member Budanzi, Graham Days, was at the meeting on Saturday that we had, the subcommittee meeting. This is the recommendation of the subcommittee to the full committee. The survey has been approved by the council, and we are seeking approval from this committee to move forward. We have a tight schedule and timeline, and I appreciate all the work and comments and questions that folks have posed. But we're going to call the question and take it to a vote. All in favor of approving the survey, please signify by saying aye. Or raise
Aye.
your hand.
Aye.
Right. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Alan Leslie Berger. We appreciate it. And I think we'll allow you to leave the meeting because we're going to proceed. You're more than welcome to stay, but we're going to move into some other items that may pose a conflict for you to be on the call.
Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Nice to see everybody.
Great.
Good
Thank you.
luck.
Bye.
Can't
Bye.
wait. Thanks.
Okay, we will move into the programming and space report by Chair Leah. Leah, you're on the call. Yes.
I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we met this past Saturday. We had a really jam-packed meeting, but it was great, very productive. We reviewed the proposal provided by the Bergers to consult with us on the space planning, and there was some discussion about what the scope of work would be, things like that. But eventually we voted unanimously to recommend it to the larger building committee. And I will get to that in a little bit. Other than that, we continued to work on the shared Google document. I think pretty much everyone contributed to it from the subcommittee. Members of the staff also contributed to it, and we have also shared, as of our library board meeting last night, I shared a copy with our library board so that they could start coming up with their own ideas. And I will do the same for the larger committee so that we can start gathering some ideas of yours as well. There was some boring discussion about category titles, and you know, if that's something you guys need to know about, I can explain more. But and then we got to the exciting part. We talked about the next step. So what things would look like if we do agree to take on the Burgers for this as a consultants for this. You know, ways that we can find out more about libraries that are out there that have really exciting stuff. Maybe having the wider committee view some technology demos to see, you know, what kind of technology is available to really make the space, you know, the best it can be. So ultimately, like I said, we came to a recommendation that we vote on the Burgers consulting proposal with some considerations. I have to stress that the most important part of that is lessening the workload on library staff and the administration. So Elizabeth, this is especially critical right now. I can say as a public librarian, the job is not always, is often not easy, but right now it's incredibly difficult. There are so many additional stressors providing service during COVID. So to relieve them of that workload, not that they wouldn't be heavily involved and have a lot of say, but to take away a lot of the, you know, nitty gritty stuff would be a huge help to them right now. It's just not a burden that they need right now. Another consideration, we do have the funding available. Obviously we have a working relationship with the Burgers already. They have extensive experience and skill set in this area. And obviously we have a very limited time span. So we're just really trying to get this done as efficiently as possible. So with that, if anyone has questions for me.
Any questions of Leah on her report out? No. Okay.
Bob,
Lois?
I believe Bob had his hand up
Oh,
first.
Bob, I'm sorry, I can't, okay. Bob?
Thank you. I don't have any questions of the report. It's a very good report, Leah. Thank you. But I do want to make a motion so we have it to discuss. I will move that
Oh,
we
yeah, sorry.
accept
I'm a newbie at this.
accept the proposal of the Burgers in an amount of $7,000 plus expenses to assist with the planning per their description on their page 3. I think it's very well done. I did a little bit of research myself on some of the work they've done. I'm impressed. I think they'll add a lot to it. We have a very tight time frame, and we need that planning to be done before we get too far down the road, because that's the only way the architect's going to be able to come up with a tentative plan or plans, and we're going to be able to find out what the costs probably are going to be. Because until we have that information, we have no way of figuring out what the costs are.
Is there a second to Bob's?
Second.
Second. Bob Ike. Okay, discussion on the motion to approve the Burgers proposal.
Mr.
Bob?
Chairman,
Yes.
I just have a question, just housekeeping. Bob, you mentioned expenses, the 7,000 plus expenses. What are those expenses? I don't think I saw that in the proposal.
It doesn't spell out what the expenses are, but my guess is it's going to be if there are travel expenses, they need to physically do some traveling. I doubt there'll be any telephone expenses, probably be copying expenses, that type of stuff. Based on my experience on another building committee and other things I've been involved in, I would guess that the expenses are going to be minimal.
Thank you.
Lois?
I just would like to reference that we're working according to the proposal that they submitted on January, the letter and the work plan that they submitted on January 4th, 2021. And the organization is Library Development Solutions, just so we're clear on what we're approving.
Yes, okay, thank you. Chris?
Back to Bob's statement, I think again, and I can clearly hear it, I think we should require our contractors to outline tentative expenses. I don't think we should, as a committee, wonder what the expenses might be. and what the cost might be. And I'm not trying to be nitpicky. I just think for transparency and for a full contract, if you're saying you're gonna have expenses, I think they should outline possible expenses. They've done this before. So I'm in line with what Bob was asking, and I think we should ask them to outline the expenses.
I can tell you, I will get that from them. In my conversations with them, the expenses were exactly what Bob said. They didn't anticipate having to travel to any of our meetings, obviously in the current situation, but it did cover things like exactly what Bob had identified. But I'm happy to get back with them and just have them detail those potential expenses, what they would be, and then I'll forward that to you.
Thank you.
I wonder, Craig, if for the sake of getting this done, whether we could put a minimum amount in, because I agree with Chris that we should have some confidence about what it would be if we said expenses not to exceed $300. Do you think that would be appropriate to add to the motion?
Oh, go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
I think, again, given their tenure in doing this work, I think I do trust them to itemize possible. I think we could word it like that. What are the possible expenses that you might accrue during this process?
Right. Okay.
I don't think I would give them the dollar amount. I think I would allow them to tell us.
Right. I think for the sake of expediency and getting this approved, if we can, I would be comfortable with a not to exceed limit on the expenses. And we can get that additional information. If it turns out to be more than a minimal amount, then we can, report back. But again, I piggyback off of Nancy and Bob, and my conversations with the Burgers is that we don't anticipate any outside expenses being more than a couple of dollars. But if we can get an itemization, we can provide that subsequent to tonight. But I would be comfortable passing or amending the motion with a not to exceed, expense amount. And then we can circle back and get everyone the information on what those potential itemized expenses would be.
Oh, I'll move to amend my motion then. $7,000 plus reasonable expenses not to exceed $500.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Yeah, and Craig, one comment. Everybody should be aware that this contract is not between the building committee and the consultant. This contract is between the town and the consultant, and the building committee is acting as advisor to the town in entering into a contract. So, we're not approving necessarily every little detail on there. We are basically recommending to the town that they enter into contract. And that's where Nancy, the professional, does take care of all those things. I agree in concept that, on larger contracts, we want to know precisely what all these reimbursable expenses are. But on something like this, what we have on the table, I'm comfortable with.
Okay. Additional comments on the motion? Udunzi?
Yes, and I expressed some of these comments at Saturday's meeting, and I enjoyed making that meeting. But I don't understand why there would be a need to alleviate lessening a workload on the library staff. I mean, 3 of the people on that subcommittee are very well versed in the profession of being a librarian. The director of library, Leah, as well as Ava. And I don't understand why we would incur a cost, whether there are funds there or not, for consultation when we're well equipped to do so. I asked at Saturday's meeting what had the discussion with the library board of trustees along with the library director and staff, what had that discussion been like with regards to their vision for the library? Because the information in which we have was the previous library director and some previous members from the previous library board of trustees. And so I think it would before we commit to a consultant, that those that are within the community take the time to do so. I mean, I know that the library is working at a capacity where you have to make an appointment to go into the library. The library is also working on limited hours from 11 to 6 and now closed on Saturdays. So I don't understand what it is we're lessening off of them and why the time hasn't been spent to at least use the information and the space assessment provided, which we all have in our binders in 2016, and kind of use that as a benchmark in terms of what the needs were then in comparison to now, and how the needs in the future may differ from that 2016 assessment. I mean, I think that they would know more so than the burgers what our community needs are, and I think that they're well equipped to determine that. I have confidence in their level of expertise to do just that. I mean, it seems as though, you know, if we go into this with the burgers, that's $12,000 in total with unknown additional expenses, that if we don't have to spend it, why should we? And taking that into consideration, I think we should also consider future surveys and future mailings that may have to go out, in which the cost that we're spending now because we have it would be on deck to be available for the things that we don't have in our peripheral at this time.
Thank you.
Thank
Elizabeth?
you.
I just wanted to say that the burgers bring a more national and worldly view, and I think they're going to help guide the process so that we really do get the library of the future that's going to last decades and be able to be responsive to what we need. Me and my staff, we have been spending a lot of time on this. We do bring a lot of expertise to the table. We all have varied backgrounds and have come from many different information environments. That being said, there's still a lot that comes from having that expert opinion and from doing this so many times. They've done it in so many different environments that I think that they're really going to help us get this right with the one chance that we have.
Thank you. Ava?
Okay, I'm going to speak as the chairman of the library board, as opposed to a member of this committee solely. There are a couple of points that need to be responded to. Yes, I am a professional librarian and have been for decades. Leah is a librarian, so is Elizabeth. However, librarians have extremely limited experience with the specific skill set that is required to translate what we know into square footage and building components. That's something that the burgers bring to this process. It is not something we have. Also, the fact that the library may not be open the same number of hours and the fact that the library has to make appointments ignores the fact that every single request for books has to now be taken in person. They have to be gathered. They have to be put into packets for pickup at the curb. You need staff at the curb. You need staff overseeing all the appointments. Then all of the things have a specific set of requirements from the state for decontamination, for varying times, for varying treatments. All of that is required of the staff. And then the materials have to be replaced. The staff is doing more work than ever. Just because forward-facing looks different in terms of a pandemic, it's a mistake to underestimate how much effort the staff is putting in. On top of that, they're responding to all of the requests from the subcommittee. They're responding to everything this committee has asked of them. there is a limit to how much we can ask of people who are already doing a full-time job, more than the full-time job, and already dealing with us.
I'm going to ask our architects to chime in and give their opinion and recommendations to the import of having a space design professional assist in a library building project.
Yeah,
it is, in my opinion, customary to do so, but I'll turn it over to Whit.
Sure. I mean, I think that the importance, as I think Elizabeth alluded to, what the Burgers or a library programmer brings to this is that vision of the broader picture of what are the future of libraries, what are the trends, what's happening around the country in different places in terms of libraries of different communities of your size. So they offer a much richer view of all the possibilities out there that they can propose and help to build that program to be something that is forward thinking and state of the art. You know, I think everybody in our own environments, you know, librarians in particular library may have their own perspective of how libraries work, and it's really helpful to broaden that view to a much bigger perspective, and that's the value that they bring.
Thank you. All right, Leah, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. We're talking about investing money that this committee has in getting this project right. That is my view of this. We want to do it right. And if we contract with the Burgers, I believe we can do it right. And I do believe that is a very worthwhile investment, again, of funds that we already have. Thank you.
And I would just say, it's my recollection at the last meeting, Budunzi, you were recommending that we work with Maxine Blayweiss for the programming piece. And so, again, I'm not exactly sure. It didn't seem to be an issue when you brought up Maxine Blayweiss at the last meeting.
No, I wasn't advocating for her. I was questioning why she wasn't a part of the selection based on a previous meeting in which, you know, when we were initially talking about the Burgers doing the survey, and I requested a selection of choices, and, you know, she was presented as a choice while we were discussing surveys. So then when we came to discussing a consultant, I couldn't understand why she was no longer a part or an option when it had been previously determined that she's qualified to do so. So that's my specifics with regards to that. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to call the excuse me, the motion to. Is there? Bob, last comment.
Thank you. I think Verdosi under slight misunderstanding. Just because the Burgers are going to be hired under this proposal to be the programming consultants doesn't mean the library staff is going to be out of the picture. They're going to be providing what information to the Burgers of what they see and what their thinking is. And the Burgers, based on their knowledge and their past experience, will be asking them questions that's going to have them thinking differently than they already do, and trying to help them come up with things to think of for future needs.
I understand that, Bob. Thank you.
All right. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Abstentions?
Nay.
Okay. Thank you so much. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is an update from Mark.
The construction manager subcommittee will hold our first meeting on Tuesday, the 19th at 5:30. And I will ask Nancy to send out a
Zoom invite.
memo to it goes to the full committee, correct? Thank you.
Any questions for Mark? All right. Hearing none. The next item on the agenda is the update from Elizabeth. Library Services.
Okay, can I share my screen? Yes.
Be able to.
Okay, new year, new logo. We wanted to show everybody our new logo up here in the top left corner of our website, bplc.org. We also, as of last night, adopted a new mission, and our mission statement is thus: Bloomfield Public Library aims to provide all members of our diverse community with access to comprehensive services, expansive print and electronic resources, technology, and expert assistance from a caring and responsive staff. By breaking down barriers to access and opening doors to opportunity, building community, and encouraging lifelong learning, BPL works to improve the quality of life for all of our residents and strives to be the heart of our town. While we're on our website, I just wanted to point out that we are still missing a few photos from committee members. So if you have a headshot, you can just email that to me and we will put that up. But you'll see on our website page, we do have information about the building committee. We also have information about our survey that's coming soon and a button to click on where you can sign up to get our new e-newsletter blast, which will drop January 22nd. And so I encourage you all to make sure you fill that out and to let the public know that that's where they can sign up for that. Last month was our highest number ever of digital stats in terms of people using our third location, which is now formally known as BPL Online, and downloading materials. And again, that's ever. So we have seen that those numbers continue to increase, and we're very excited about that. And then finally, we had a social media post, which I will show you all right now. Here, that NBC Connecticut picked up, and that is the fact that last month at Prosser alone, we processed over 2,300 items being returned and then quarantined and going through that whole process. So I got a phone call from NBC Connecticut this morning, and they came in, and we ended up being on the news at 5 o'clock. So I presume that that will be repeated. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And that was all from me.
Great. Any questions for Elizabeth? Okay, great.
Oh, I forgot one more thing about expanding services. As of February 6th, we will be open from 11 to 3 on Saturdays at both of our physical locations.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Elizabeth. We're now going to turn it over for our project update from our friends from Taisu Kim, Wit, and Taisu.
Okay, I can just share my screen. Hopefully I get the right piece here. There we go. So just an update on this project schedule, which you should be familiar with. A few little adjustments, which I'll walk you through. We're basically on schedule. Obviously, we're looking at the sites. The subcommittees are ongoing. The programming committee is ongoing. There was a mention of obviously the discussion this evening about the space planning consultant getting on board. And looking ahead, a couple of the immediate milestones, as we talked about, is trying to move towards establishing the preliminary program, space planning, that we need to use to develop the site options further. The first step, though, is really looking at the sites themselves and trying to see if we can narrow down the options that we're looking at, the number of sites based on some of the criteria that we have looked at, which I will walk you through. As we move into some of the community outreach and survey work that's already been discussed this evening, and I think there is, as Greg said, I guess there's a subcommittee that's starting to look at the strategy and timing for how to go about some of the community outreach, public information meetings, which will, as soon as we get that information from the committee, we can fold that into the schedule as well. But we envision it happening, the survey obviously starting soon, and the public information meetings probably in the period between February and April. Likewise, Town council meetings would be set during that same period. So we'll stand by for information on that. A couple other things, just to give ourselves some immediate deadlines. We are looking at a SKP draft of first phase.
Nancy, can you mute everyone, please?
Yep.
We're looking at a draft of the We're looking at a draft of the first phase by February 24th. So that'll be an initial package of the report talking about the site selection. And then aiming for a draft of the final study by April 21st. So those are the target dates that we're aiming for. Obviously, it's contingent somewhat on having this programming effort follow along concurrently, because that will allow us to get into more detail as we look at the options, as we look at developing each site. So our immediate issue is trying to look at the locations and the sites. And I think you're familiar with all of these sites so far, but I'll just very briefly, obviously, you know, Prosser, Town Hall, all of these public properties that had been identified that we began with looking at. Those are all colored in green. These two blue sites are the two private properties that were brought up for study. And then the two yellow properties were two other properties that TSKP had suggested investigating a little bit further. So that's the list of projects from a number of sources, and that's what we have been exploring. So our first effort is really trying to winnow down this list. And so this is a draft of the site selection criteria for these sites. And so you need to understand this is the initial criteria for the viability of a site. This is not the level of criteria that we will get into as we develop the options further. There's a lot more criteria that we've talked about in the past, and that will be a second level of evaluation when we get to that point in the process. But for now, we're looking at each property from a very straightforward standpoint. So we have obviously Prosser Library, address, area. Is there an actual acquisition cost, or is it public? No, meaning it's a public property. It's already owned by the town. Is there adequate buildable land? Is there enough space just to do a quick test fit to fit a building there? Yes. Is there room for expansion? Our initial assessment just from these blocks of space is that that property probably is not good for expansion. It could accommodate a library, but not future expansion very easily. Does it support the development plan relative to the information that from the town's development plan? And certainly in terms of their emphasis on developing and growing the center of town, I think it certainly seems to support that effort. So that would be a yes. Are there site challenges to that site? And that's kind of a broad catchphrase for whatever issues each site may offer. And obviously in the case of Prosser, wetlands or flooding is a concern. So that is listed as a yes. So that's kind of a quick scoring for the Prosser site. And we certainly, as a result, we recommend that site remaining as an option that we will continue to explore. Likewise, Town Hall site, again, looking at these criteria in this format, there's public land, it's buildable. There's not a lot of opportunity for expansion there from what we would be building initially. It does support the development plans. It doesn't seem to have any site challenges. It's fairly level. It doesn't have wetlands infringing on the site significantly. So we recommend continuing further study of that site. Wintonbury McMahon, again, public property, adequate buildable land, room for expansion. Actually, it does, I think, have room to potentially expand in the future. Supporting development plans, I believe it does in general, but that still would need to be confirmed as we go forward further. Any special challenges to the site? We don't see those at this point, at this level. So we recommend continuing further study. As we move to the next site, which is the corner property of Cottage Grove and Walsh, Blue Hills and Cottage Grove Road, which we have discussed in the past. Public property, adequate buildable land, no. Room for expansion, no. Unsure about the development plan applicability. It does have site challenges in terms of wetlands as well as the traffic issues that were brought up with that site as well. So we recommend eliminating this site from further consideration. So that's yes.
Can I add something to this? Well, we did do a quick site study of each one, and it appears that if site is narrower than, let's say, 108 feet wide, it just does not work very well as a really spacious, open kind of layout. And you can see this site, the fronting the Bloomfield Avenue side, it's less than 160 feet. So it will be very challenging and I think detriment to creating open, spacious kind of layout.
Yeah, I think that particularly applies to the next site, which is the Park Brook
well,
site.
even this one,
Yeah,
I'm
both of
saying
those.
is a front where is not shown as a wetland. Still, it's very limited and narrow site, which is a problem.
Right. So this site doesn't score well in terms of buildable land, room for expansion, and while it doesn't have particular site challenges at Park Brook, again, that narrowness of the site is definitely a detriment in terms of having a plan function properly. So we recommend dropping this one. Seneca Road, private property, so there is a acquisition cost associated with it. Adequate buildable land, really, it's a very narrow site and is not really a good site for fitting a building on very easily. Not easily expanded. And while there's not a site challenge, I think the other problem with it is that it doesn't really have frontage on any of the primary roads in town as well, which I think the library really needs to have. So we recommend eliminating that one. And the last site under consideration was the Linton Murray Mall. Again, privately owned. Buildable land, it's hard to determine based on the situation with the mall. But you know, does it develop?
Wait, did you comment on Park Brook?
Yes, that was the one right after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that. I mean, that's very narrow one.
That's correct.
Yeah. Narrower than previous one, Cottage Grove Road and Walsh Street.
Right. Relative to the Winterbury Mall one, there's so many uncertainties relative to acquisition and negotiation with the property owner. I think there had been at previous meetings discussion about that it probably was not viable. So what we're looking for tonight, if possible, we're asking the committee to look at this criteria and make a determination to eliminate the sites that we're recommending to remove from consideration, to leave these first three sites as the sites to continue study as we develop the plans further with the program as it comes up. And with that, I will open it up to discussion or questions, or back to Greg. You're on mute, Greg.
I would just comment and thank you with the three sites that are recommended here are the three sites that the committee came up with during our special meeting back in early November. And so it's consistent with the work that we did, but thank you so much for presenting this. And again, it's your recommendation. And I definitely want to open it up to the floor to hear from other members of the committee. What
Bob
maybe
had his hand up.
Okay, Mark.
No, somebody.
Bob had his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm the one who brought up the Seneca Road property, and I agree, it's not gonna work, it's too small. And I think, I think we're back to sites 1, 2, and 3. And are you looking for a motion, Greg?
Yes.
All right, I move that we reduce the number of sites to be considered down to the current Prosser Library site, Town Hall site, either on the Park Avenue side or the Bloomfield Avenue side, and McMahon-Wittenberry Library site.
Second.
Bob Ike seconded. Great, thank you. Discussion. Maybe we can close the screen and
Yes.
so I can see the group here. Okay. Any discussion on the motion that was just presented by Bob?
I just have a question, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm coming late. I know one time the architect mentioned what's the deal with the middle school? That wasn't good because of the wetlands?
It's wet.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other?
Lois has her hand up.
Lois?
Greg, we didn't really look at the other issues related to the Wittenberry Mall site. If the acquisition were possible, do you think any of those other criteria would be more positive? They're all to be determined right now. I mean, is it big enough? Would it be expandable? Is it consistent with the town plan? Those questions.
Right.
I mean, I think that the site is clearly big enough, the overall site, but I think the complexity is whether even if you could get a piece of it, there's a big level of complexity as to how you would break apart what's there currently, or whether you're going to demolish everything on that site, which adds another cost to the project. So that there are a lot of unknowns to that I think would stretch out the process for this, perhaps more than.
So it's really a timing issue.
Could be.
Well, if the southeastern side of parcel where there is one, I think, freestanding building, I don't know what that is now. So that some kind of a food court or restaurant, but that parcel, if we be able to carve out like 4 acres from that southeastern part of that mall, I think it's a very good site. But again, whether they're willing to carve out a piece of this like this is the question, and it really has to be discussed with the owner whether they're willing to discuss about this.
Right. Michelle? You're muted, Michelle.
Okay. I would be willing to support the motion with an amendment. I would be unwilling to eliminate the Wintonberry Mall site. The only thing that I can say about that is that if an opportunity avails itself, which in these times, with regard to wildly fluctuating real estate values, that site should become available, that would be a site that I personally would be very interested in. If the motion doesn't include that, then I wouldn't be able to support it. 2 other things that I would be interested in knowing that are not germane to the motion, but I think are very important, is that very early on, I asked about the assessed value of each of the town-owned sites, and I believe that they should be before us at some juncture, particularly at the point that we select a site. And the second mitigating factor, which I also brought up with regard to the McMahon-Wintonberry site, is that there is very extensive infrastructure not available to serve that building site, which also contributes, I believe, to the cost of the site. So whatever the cost is, infrastructure leading to that site to be able to serve that site becomes a cost. So if the Wintonberry Mall is added to that motion, I will support it. If it's not included in it, I won't support it, but I just add the other things with regard to site selection criteria down the road. And also, I would presume that there would be some sort of actual site evaluation done for each one of the sites by engineers, unless Taisu Kim has engineers on staff. Do you people have engineers on staff?
We don't have engineers on our
Okay,
staff, but we
okay.
bring in as
You
we
know,
need it,
okay.
particularly related to the Prosser site where.
Yeah,
we have
okay.
engineering to
The
look at.
problem sites, that's what I'm referring to. So, I'd be looking for that too, but those are just things down the road. The only thing that I would be adding to the 3 proposed sites in the motion is to include the Wintonberry Mall site.
Okay, if I could just respond briefly. Some of the points that you brought up, I recall you had brought up previously, and that's fine, I agree. Those are things that would be part of that later evaluation criteria as we
Right.
get into more detail on the site. So
Right.
definitely we'll keep that in
I
mind.
just bring them up from the standpoint of that they are very incidental in the criteria for
Right.
site selection.
Yeah, at this point, this is trying to pare it down to the just
I got it.
purely about the site.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the other thing I would just add, if it's the decision is to keep the Wintonberry Mall a part of it, that's fine. We could proceed with that. I guess I would ask, is there someone who would be able to go forward with that and make contact with the owner and find out, is there any viability?
I cannot give you any information at this time, but I will inquire.
Mr. Chairman, why would a lay person be doing that? That's something that be done by the staff, by a professional. We wouldn't have a lay person go contact the Winterberry Mall and say, hey, we would be interested to buy the piece. That's not done any building committees I've been on.
Right. Well, I think what we
I
can,
don't think anyone's suggesting that.
well, Bob, I think what we can do is, work with the town officials and come up with the correct procedure to connect with the owner of the Wintonberry Mall and move that along and report back to the group. And who made the motion to do the site? So is it Bob?
Yeah.
Berman.
Yes.
Do you want to accept Michelle's amendment to your motion
Uh,
of adding
I'm willing
Wintonberry?
to- I'm willing to accept it because it is a possibility, even though I'm aware, as I think Michelle is also, that the owner is not really interested in talking to us about much of anything.
Okay, that's fine.
I
Okay.
didn't hear that.
I said, I'm aware, as I'm sure you are, that the owner really isn't interested in talking to the town about much of anything. But that's fine. I'll accept the amendment.
Okay.
I still didn't hear it. The sound is not good. So is it part of the motion or no?
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes. Okay. Any more discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Aye for me as well. Pardon me. I couldn't get myself off of mute fast enough.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Bob, Witt, and Taisu Kim. Thank you. Okay. Next item under new business is invoice approval, and I'll turn that over to Nancy.
Yep. I sent out the first invoice, BPL number 1 from Library Development Solutions. This is the burgers on the preliminary work they've already done for the survey, and it's for $2,500.
Go move.
Second. Bob Berman, second. Any discussion on the motion to make the payment to the burgers? Great. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed or any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you so much, Nancy. Future meetings, item 5, our next meeting will be on January 27th followed by a meeting on February 10. And comments from the committee. We'll go into comment session here and ask folks to limit their comments to 60 seconds if you can. Yes, Lois, you're muted.
Just want people to know that I did check on the grant. The state grant does in fact require that we would meet, if we're going to exceed $10 million project, that we would meet LEED Silver standards. That's required, it's not recommended.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Okay. All right, hearing none. Nancy, we have any public comments?
Yes, we have Sten Casperson. Go ahead, Sten. Unmute yourself and go ahead.
Sten Casperson, 6 Stonehill Road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two very quick things. On the chart that TSKP showed, the Prosser site and the McMahon site are virtually identical in size, but everybody knows that Prosser has a brook running through. Second comment, with respect to an auditorium or an assembly hall or a performance hall, I suggest that if people haven't seen it, they look at the great room in the Human Services Facility and see if that might be the kind of a facility they would like to see in the library. It can be broken down into 3 major areas. It's flat, it's big. Take a look as a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, great. All right, if that is it, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And again, I want to thank everyone for their time. And this was a great meeting. And thank you all for your input. Taisu Kim and Whit, thank you. And is there a motion to?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bob. Second. All right. Good night, folks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg.
We'll talk soon. Bye.
Good night.